Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd podcast. Of course, I am James Boyd, joined by the other James, Jim Ayello, my editor over at The Athletic. And Jim, we have a lot to discuss following a game that I will never forget for all the wrong reasons at Empire Field at Mile High in Denver. So I'll tell you my reaction to a few things.
Yeah.
We all thought that Jonathan Taylor scored. I don't think anybody thought he didn't. I don't think anybody in the stadium even knew. We were all like, man, what a run. They just gashed them. They got this. They might actually pull this off. And then replay assistance comes in, and it turns out that JC dropped the ball. He literally dropped the ball. And I was thinking, wow, that is the play that's going to define this game. And I think it did. But then there was the A.D. Mitchell double pass where Nick Bonito turned into Ed Reed, as A.D. Mitchell described it to us in the locker room. And that, to me, was the nail in the coffin because they were only down 4 at that point. So, obviously, a really bad loss. Now the Colts' playoff chances are very, very slim. And on top of that, just the fashion in which they lost is a gut punch like you wouldn't believe. That locker room was shell-shocked. I mean, they always are after losses in football. But that locker room, it took something out of them, in my opinion, when I was walking through it afterwards. So, from your perspective at home, watching it on TV, how did you see this playing out? And could you believe what you saw, honestly?
No. The way the way this game ended, I thought, shoot, man, the way this game started, I was thinking, all right, Colts come out, run down the field, touchdown, the design run, 23-yard touchdown, the 13, shaky play after that, but they kept Denver out of the end, or off the scoreboard for the most part, the one touchdown in the first half. I'm thinking, yeah, they got this thing. Like, this is going to be a fun finish to the season. We got 3 games left and be fighting for a playoff game. I forgot sorry, I'm looking through it now. They picked off Knicks on the first possession of the second half.
Yeah.
It's just wild, man. I really cannot explain. Again, people who say momentum's not a thing, you're wrong. It's wrong. It's hard to quantify for sure, and try to measure it. It's wrong. But that fumble just sucked all the air out of the team. The Jonathan Taylor fumble, I should say. It was just, like you said, it was an absolute gut punch. 20-7. We can go into who didn't play very well. I mean, looking at you, Anthony Richardson, throughout this game, but 20-7. I don't think we even care or notice Anthony Richardson the rest of the game. They're probably just grinding out clock. I know it's the third quarter, don't get me wrong, but that puts the Broncos in a must-pass situation. They can pin their ears back and chase after them because they're down by 2 scores, which is not where Denver wants to be. It's not the kind of offense they really are. And meanwhile, the Colts get to kind of ride the run game, which was okay during the first half. Not great, but we saw that Jonathan Taylor sprung that 41-yard run that should have been a touchdown. I cannot explain how it's one of the craziest games I've seen in terms of just the momentum completely shifting in a game. And a team just having the wind knocked totally out of them. And again, I'm sure you saw that on the field as it was happening. But like you said, it was they almost got to recover from it. And then A.D. Mitchell threw that interception/fumble that it really was, which is going to upset me. I hate that they call it a fumble, but because Nick Bonito deserves credit for a pick. But it's a fumble, and you returned it. And then, that was the end of the game. There was no coming back from that.
I think
such a stupid way to lose, man.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know if you believe in momentum or not, but I do believe in stupid. And I tweeted during the game, they looked like the dumbest team in the NFL that day. And they did. And I would honestly dare anyone in that locker room, on staff, Jim Irsay himself, to say differently. They looked so dumb. And I think that's what made it sting so much was, as a lot of players put it, and even JT himself, who owned everything, he said it can't happen. He'll never happen again. And obviously, he felt really, really bad about that. That's probably the most emotional I've seen JT since last year's season ender, where they lost to Houston, and he was kind of teary-eyed after that. This one, he was emotional and kind of, you could tell. And the line that kind of stuck with me about everything that he said, he was like, because I asked him, what do you tell your teammates when you make a mistake like that? Because you got to say something. And he's like, I apologize. And then I asked, what did it mean to have those guys tell you during the moment that we're going to keep fighting with you? And he took a pause and took a deep breath, and he said it meant a lot. And the way he said it came from his soul, because he's like, these guys know me. And as much as, I joke about JT giving all these non-answers and being the team PR guy, all these things, right? I do know he puts so much into being ready and trying to be ready for his teammates. And I know people are going to say like, oh, what about when he was holding out for a contract? And what about his ankle? All that stuff. Get all that. But when he's on the field on Sundays, they know that guy has prepared himself as best as he can to go out there and perform. And he made just a mindless, boneheaded, stupid decision. Yeah. And it will sting him for the rest of his career. And he'll always think back. I'm not saying he can't recover from this. It's not the end all be all for a 25-year-old running back. However, I think it's one of those things where seriously, whenever he hangs it up, he's always going to think like, man, I should have one more touchdown than I have. And what makes it so bad is that play, fumble. Yeah, one less fumble too. and that play, and literally, just keeping with the trends here, one less playoff berth possibly because of it. Yeah, like that play not only changed the game, it changed their season. It changes their season. I know we talked about Anthony struggling, and he was running for his life behind an offensive line that saw him get pressured the most throughout a game this season. It was like 48%. He's under pressure, so. It wasn't that great. So to have things just kind of unravel at that moment and then compound it with the trick play was rough. And I think it was one of those things where everyone's walking back to the locker room, at least, offensively, whether it's Shane Steichen or Anthony Richardson or Jonathan Taylor, they're all thinking like, we blew this. And if you'd have told me they would have lost this game 31-13, I would have thought, okay, Bo Nix had a great day. The Denver defense shut him out, held him down. But that necessarily wasn't always the case. I know the offense really struggled after that fumble. However, they gave them that game. They gave them that game. And you could, reading some of the quotes from the Broncos players, where they're like, yeah, man, like, we were kind of dead in the water until JT gave us some life.
Yep.
And it was just a really, really bad way to lose. And something that I don't think they're going to be able to recover from this season. I know they have 3 games left. We'll get all into the playoff scenarios and all of that. But just as far as this game, for them to have 2 weeks to prepare, your season's on the line, and to come out and have those 2 mistakes, one of them mindless, the other one just, to me, a very dumb play call. It's hard to swallow that. It's very hard to swallow that. We also grilled Shane Steichen about the call involving A.D. Mitchell. Yeah. And we kind of argued about this, and
I said you and I have debated this twice already before this podcast.
Yes, and yes, and just for the listeners out there, I'm always right. Okay, this is my podcast. I'm right. No, I'm joking. I'll let you go first on how you feel about it, because I certainly have my thoughts as well.
Yeah. Listen, it's James's podcast. He's always right. My job is just try to steer him in the right direction. But here's I don't hate the play call. I don't. I think trick plays are. This is what trick plays are. Like, if trick plays work, people think you're a genius. If trick plays don't work, people think you're an idiot. So we've seen plenty of trick plays work in the NFL this year, and the offensive coordinator looks like a friggin' god for calling it. Wow, right at the right time, dialed it up. The Colts definitely needed some help in this game. The offense was moving the ball a little bit on that drive, but again, momentum had been sucked out of that team a little bit. They needed something to kind of inject a spark, inject some life into them, and I think a double pass would have done it, or at least would have helped. Now, there are things you can quibble with that I think, and again, this is where I think you and I are going to disagree. I don't think you don't like the call, I think, in general, but you especially don't like the A.D. Mitchell part of it.
Yes.
I will say that it sounds like they worked on this in practice, with A.D. Mitchell, and that he was good at it. And
I would hope so to call it. Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah,
I would hope
right.
He worked in practice.
Steichen, if anything, is a detailed coach, I would say.
Yes,
I don't think he calls detailed. The play. Yeah, I think he's detailed. You wrote a great feature about him being detailed. I think he is that, and I think he wouldn't have called the play unless he saw it run well, like multiple times in practice, and thought it could work. My biggest quibble is with the Colts offensive lineman who let Nick Benito. Like, this to me was more of an execution problem than an actual play call problem, where they let Nick Benito slip right. I watched that replay like 7 times. Like, Benito's the only one who realizes quite what's going on.
Yeah,
he's like the only guy, and there are Colts linemen there ready that should be there to block him, and they don't. He just slips right through them. Like I almost want to blame Anthony Richardson for not being a receiver and coming at the ball, at least breaking it up, but I don't think he saw him coming, so I'm not going to blame Anthony Richardson. I do think that the offensive linemen there were probably set up ready. They were ready to set up for that screen and go, like, or not screen, but like to shield Anthony Richardson so he can make the throw. But like, you have to block the guy before. Don't just wait till after. Anyway, that was my take on it. It was more of a failure of execution than a failure of a play call at the moment. I know you have a different spin on this, and I think it's legitimate, but it's not where I went with it.
So I do agree with you.
It's illegitimate.
And you look at the if you look at the all 22 film, or even like they have a NFL Next Gen stats, we look at the little dots on the players where they are.
Yeah.
It looks like on this particular play that Bernard Ryman probably should have tried to pick up Nick Bonito.
Yes.
Or hit him, and he didn't.
I wasn't going to name names, but I should have. Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. I'm looking at the play.
Yeah.
And he was saying, like, of course, he wishes he probably would have got in front of somebody, or thought he had a different timing on the play, whatever the case may be. Keep in mind, A.D. Mitchell also caught the ball, like looked at it, turned it, and then threw it. So that
he did take forever.
Extra,
there's
second,
no doubt about that.
That throws things off. But to me, I don't know if I like that call right there, mainly because it's 2nd and 7, and you're at their 40. You're already kind of at midfield. You're in you're okay. I don't know if I felt, or that offense felt as desperate to need a sort of a play like that in that moment. And so didn't like the play call. And then I also really didn't like involving A.D. Mitchell in it, because he hasn't done anything really positively of consequence this season. And so you're asking a guy who has made a number of mental mistakes this season, whether it's, route issues, not being on the same page as the quarterback. Even when he caught the pass against the Jets where he probably should have scored, he cut back inside and got tackled. Sometimes he can't get out of his own way. And so I'm like, you pick that guy to basically put your season in the hands of?
Yeah.
And so that, to me, is the most unforgiving part. And I don't necessarily blame A.D. Mitchell as much as I blame Shane Steichen for even putting him in that position. And I get it. It worked in practice. He had it up all week. That was your ace card. But, man, and don't get me wrong, Nick Bonito made a hell of a play. Like I said, A.D. Mitchell called him Ed Reed, and he shot out of a cannon on that play and read it. But in reading Nick Bonito's comments about the play, he said, hey, I knew something was up because these guys don't run screens with A.D. Mitchell. And then keep in mind, A.D. Mitchell probably wasn't even going to be playing that many snaps Sunday, because until Alec Pierce got hurt. So let's say Alec Pierce stays healthy throughout that game. You mean to tell me you were going to call that play and have A.D. Mitchell come in, which everyone kind of knows, okay, this guy hasn't played today yet. Well, what's up with that? And they're going to run the fake screen double pass? Like, I don't like it. Obviously, if it works, genius. Didn't work. And I think, to me, it kind of speaks a little bit to Shane's insight as to how he views things, because if you go back to last season, the way it ended, he chose to put the ball in Gardner Minshew and Tyler Goodson's hands.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get it. This play probably worked, again, in practice. But do you want to put your season in the hands of A.D. Mitchell? That's all I got to say. Like, do you want to put your season in the hands of Tyler Goodson? And I don't know if I feel comfortable doing that in that moment, because after that, man, it was over. That was the gut punch like you wouldn't believe. I couldn't believe the play call. And that, to me, was Nick Bonito running into the playoffs and the Colts having to watch another team take their spot. So, tough break. And then as far as A.D. Mitchell goes, I know people were getting on him. The one thing I didn't like was just, and I know he's young, and I've never been in his shoes, never will be, so I'll say that. But you cannot say you execute the play call when it ends like that. You probably shouldn't say that. I get what he's saying, like, hey, I did what I actually do. But to repeatedly say I executed the play call when it literally went the worst possible way it could go is not the answer you need to be giving. And you probably just got to own it more so like JT did. Just own it. Fall on the
Yeah.
sword. Everyone's going to kill you for it anyways. That's professional sports, unfortunately. But you have to own it more than that. You can't sit up there with a bunch of cameras in your face and say, hey, well, he made a great play, but I executed it. Nah. Like,
I've watched this play like 17 times since we started talking. AD Mitchell did not execute the play in the way in which it was designed. I'm just going to say that. He takes forever to get the ball in his hands and throw it back. Here's the other thing. You know how I know that? Unless I believe that's Will Mallory running down the side, like running the far end. That's who Richardson is supposed to throw to.
mm-hmm.
How I know this is such a poorly timed play is that by the time Richardson is supposed to like get the ball back, Mallory's done with his route and he's covered. So it's not going to work. Like the double pass is not the only way this play works is if Richardson takes off and runs, which to be fair, if he does take off and run, he might score. There's no one on that side of the field if they block Benito. But like it takes forever for him to get the ball back. And again, Richardson's not going to be able to throw it. I mean, he might because he's Anthony Richardson, who has made some questionable decisions in this game and might have chucked it downfield to see if he could get it in there. However, it happened way too slowly for that to have been the way they did it in practice. Is my thought. But to your point on Mitchell in the way he answered it, yeah, fall on the sword a little bit more, man. Like that's all. And he's got to learn. Like it's almost like it kind of goes back to the Anthony Richardson conversation we had where he was just honest about when he was tired and the tap out and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, man, don't say that. Like you got to know better than that. And maybe it's a couple 22-year-olds that don't really know how to be pros in that way yet and are learning. I'm sure in some of the same ways that people went up to Anthony Richardson after he said what he said after the tap out game. I'm sure some people went up to AD Mitchell and said, hey, man, maybe next time don't say you executed the play well after that happened. So, yeah, I don't love it, and I understand Colts fans being frustrated by it. I would mostly just chalk it up to him being young. What I do want to talk about, though, is your Steichen issue. I can't decide where I'm at. I really like because I think you and I argued about the Tyler Goodson thing last year. It's like if you don't believe in the players on your team, then don't have them on your team. Like I kind of think if you believe each guy can play a role and do the things that they are capable. Again, he was supposedly a good pass catcher. This year has been not so great, but he was supposedly a good pass catcher, and you got to trust him in that situation. Though I was teasing you last time about your point not being valid. This time you gotta trust your big time players in big time moments. It's not. I understand.
Here's my other thing too. Say you do throw it across the field, right?
Yeah.
And Nick Benito does not try to go intercept it.
Yeah.
But he goes to crush AR. Then what? Like that's the other scenario that I'm thinking about. Because if I'm thinking, wow, you're throwing way across the field, it's a lot of time for somebody to get a lot of momentum going and crush this guy because at that point he's a pass catcher. So again, I can nitpick. I hated that play call. I felt like that was very desperate, and it was. And
yeah.
It cost them. But we can also, and we'll get into it later in this podcast, but I do think one of the reasons you make that play call is because you don't trust your quarterback as a passer.
Yep.
Like that's the other underlying issue that I really didn't flesh out too much in the game story. But we can definitely try to get into it here on the podcast. But the next thing I want to get into, now that game, again, hurt, gut punch, terrible loss, one that this team will not forget for sure, and especially AD Mitchell and John Tiller. They will never forget these games. But now you look at 3 games where you still have a slim chance to get in. It's not over. Need some help. I'll let you break that down.
Yeah.
But I think what resonated the most in that locker room was when I asked Pitt, hey, what do you lean on when things like this happen and you've been through this before? Does it feel like it's the same thing over and over? And he says, well, working through some things. We're a young team. We're growing. And, getting close is better than not being close at all. And I'm like, that's the issue. That's the issue that plagues the Colts. And I get it. Pittman's not going to come out and say, hell, season's over, we're done. He's never going to say he shouldn't say that as a player.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's saying, oh, we got close, just got to keep fighting, hope for the best. That's the problem with this team. They're always kind of right there, but never serious. And to me, this past Sunday, they were the definition of unserious.
Yeah, yeah,
So that to me is the underlying problem with the Colts, not only from this game, before this overall season, and really the last few years here, last several years here, is that they're never good enough to be substantially better. They're always kind of just where they were, in years past. Yeah, you might win, 8 or 9 games. Oh, you might have a bad year. Oh, you might get close
yep,
to the playoffs, but you never actually make any substantial strides. And so all
yep,
that to say, now you're facing a 3-game season, 3 games left, where
yep,
you're in the same boat. So
yeah.
you were here at one point covering this team. So how do you view the last stretch of this season? And also, I guess, what's still at stake for
Yeah.
this team? Because they do have a chance to get in. And it's not impossible. I'll say that.
No, no. I mean, I don't know if that even makes it better. I have to be honest with you. Even if they win 3 more games and they get in at 9-8,
I
like
know. I
okay,
know.
like it's. I think it's good for development of Richardson and good for Steichen and whatever. Like yeah, there's some good stuff there. I'm not. They're not going to beat whoever the never the 2 seed is in the AFC, whether it's beating the Chiefs or the Bills. I'm not beating those teams on the road in the playoffs. So, um, I will give you the hope that is the Colts the playoff chances, which is they have about a 15 to 16% chance, depending on where you look. At 15%, according to the NFL playoff projector we have here at the Athletic. It's pretty simple. They have they need to get a wild card spot. The division's over. They've lost that 10 times in a row now. Which again, to me, that's like losing the division 10 times in a row is embarrassing. First, two, it's embarrassing that every other team in that division, and two, including the Jacksonville Jaguars, have won it twice. Tennessee Titans have won it twice, and the Houston Texans have won it 6 times. Like
We've seen teams
that's
bottom out.
insane.
I'll let you continue, Jim. But we've seen
No, yeah,
teams like Houston and like Jacksonville bottom out, get a different quarterback, and then go win it again.
yeah, surpass the Colts. Yep,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
It's
what?
It's the cycle of mediocrity, which we're going to get to because you wrote about it today, and we're going to write about it a lot more coming up. But yeah, so here we go. 3 games. Simplest way to break it down is that the Chargers. One of the reasons I think everybody was there was like that big split going into the Broncos game was like 60. It was like a 60% chance if they to make the playoffs if they had won the Colts, and like a 6% chance if they lost. And you might be saying, well, why is it 15% now? I think most projection systems didn't have the it has to account for what was going to happen in the Chargers Bucks game, and I think some of them had the Bucks favored in that. I'm sorry, the Chargers favored in that game, and therefore when the Chargers lost and remained at 8 wins, that boosted the Colts odds more than you would have expected coming out of that loss to the Broncos. So that's why it's at 15%. So speaking of the Chargers, they need some help from the Chargers, which hey, historically the Chargers love to crumble at the end of seasons. This is what they do as a franchise.
Chargering.
Yeah, for the Colts, it's being mediocre, and for the Chargers, it's charging, and it's falling apart at the end of a game or at the end of a season. So they are 8-6. They have 3 games left. They need to lose 2, and the Colts need to run the table, win all 3, which they could do. They have They have the Titans, Jags, and Giants left on their schedule, so they could certainly win all 3 of those games. Though I would say I'm not counting any gimme games for this current version of the Colts. I think every
No.
game might be a struggle, but say they win all 3. If the Chargers were to lose 2 of their final 3, which they have to play the Broncos, at the Patriots, and at the Raiders. So unlikely because the Patriots and Raiders are terrible. But if they lose 2 of those final 3, they get in by virtue of tiebreaker with conference record over the Chargers. The other way they can get in, this is highly, 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 highly unlikely. But again, they have to sweep, win their final 3, and have the Ravens lose out, which they're the Ravens. They're not going to lose out, so it's not really even worth talking about. But they finish with the Steelers, Texans, and Browns. So I guess Steelers, Texans are tough games. Browns probably not as much. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about scenarios because I think we're more interested in talking about what I said this in the beginning is like, okay, they win 9 games. They win 8 games. This is the cycle of mediocrity that the Colts are in. And frankly, this is the cycle that they're in under Chris Ballard. He is now 60, 68-1 as a GM. He has no division titles. He has 1 playoff win, 2 playoff appearances, and that was a long time ago, by the way, the playoff win. So, and largely a roster that wasn't really his, but that's a quibble. I think the bigger picture is what we've been talking about is that it's just the same thing over and over again right now. Like
Yes.
you talked about chargering. Right now, I feel like the last 10 years of Colts has been Coltsing. 8 years, I guess,
Yeah.
under Chris Ballard. I'm not. This is not me like advocating for him to be fired or anything. I'm not saying that's where he should be. I am saying though you have to look at his record and consider the possibility that he has, you know, not done a great job here. And I think you laid that out pretty clearly. You can kind of get into what you wrote today.
Yeah. So I will say Chris Ballard remains under contract through the 2026 season. Signed an extension, I believe, in 2021. But point being, he still has a couple years left on his deal. So if they were to part ways, something to keep in mind for the franchise to weigh. But on top of that, I look at a game like this past Sunday's and really some of the other stuff that's happened in recent years, and it's like the one unifying thread throughout all of this is your general manager. You brought Shane Steichen in, who again he looked, I thought for the most part, fantastic last year. I think he's regressed a bit this year. I think it is very fair to criticize the way he used Anthony Richardson early on this season. I don't know what offense that was compared to the one we're seeing now, where they're using him more as a runner and kind of get him into a better rhythm. I think it's fair also to look at Anthony Richardson and say, hey, this is the quarterback that you chose, that you bet your franchise on. And can we say that I think he's improved, but I don't know. We've talked about this. We've argued about this. I don't know if his highs are very high with Anthony and they're enticing, but the lows are low.
Yeah.
And he might be too erratic to be the guy. And you would like to see a little bit more progress. And I get it. He still only played, 14 NFL games, and injuries
Yeah.
and the benching that changed a lot of the experience that he should have got or would have got. But right now, today, I don't think anybody can say definitively Anthony's our guy for sure.
No.
And if you are, you're lying to yourself, because what we're seeing out there, and we've talked about this a lot, is the inability to stop the bleeding when things go wrong on offense with him. And don't get me wrong, he's shown some clutch moments as well. I can't dismiss what I saw against the Jets, what I saw against the Patriots, but there is this feeling though that if I think you said it, if he throws one interception, he's gonna throw two. Like it kind of feels like that, and I get it. He was under pressure a ton this past game. They should have blocked better for him. But when he did have moments to make some of the routine throws, he missed too many of them to sustain drives. And again, Ballard bet on him. Then you look at the stars. Who you paid? You paid Jonathan Taylor, who dropped the ball at the goal line. That's just a boneheaded play. He's had a pretty good season. He's been banged up a little bit, missed some time. He's been okay.
He's
but
been fine.
He hasn't been a star though. He's been paid like one. I
was gonna say he's a top 5 paid running back, and I don't think he's performed like one.
Not been a top 5 running back this season. I don't think anybody would say that in the Colts building. And then you look at Michael Pittman Jr. You paid him. He's dealing with the back thing, having his least productive season, and you try to empathize with that. But it's like, if you're out there, you're the main ones telling us don't use it as an excuse. So I won't. You're out there. You're not producing. You're not playing at a star level. You fumbled too.
He's had trouble with drops all season too. He felt like the ball's gone through his hand. There was the one I don't know what happened. He couldn't even get his hands underneath a pass. That was Richardson threw on the run to the right. Like, it wasn't a perfect pass, but he didn't even get his hands on it. I was what happened there?
Exactly. So
he's had a bad year.
Again, if your quarterback is a question mark, if your coach, which I'm not as harsh on Steichen as with the other stuff, but if he's regressed a little bit, if your stars aren't starring, like, those things are an indictment of your resume as a GM. And I think we all have to kind of reconcile with that and kind of ask those hard questions, which we will after the season, to Chris Ballard himself, if given the chance, and also to owner Jim Irsay. Like, what's going on? Because this is a guy who talks about Lombardi's, every time he talks to him, and they haven't even, they're going on most likely their 4th straight year missing the playoffs.
All right, so here's where I'm going to start. I agree with everything that you said about Richardson, especially about not being able to stop the bleeding. I agree with everything you said about Chris Ballard. It's been again, it's been mediocre. It hasn't even. There's been the one season where they were pretty bad. They got a top 5 pick from Pitt Richardson, so I guess that's a good thing. Is at least they had a direction that year as opposed to just being in the middle. Um, it's December 17th. I reserve the right to change my mind. I swear to you. I might feel different when I wake up tomorrow. What's that? Oh,
I was gonna push back, but I'll let you say that, because I'm one to antagonize a little bit, so I'll let you get that off. Because to me, I'm like, nah, we gonna hold this to you forever. I'm like adding freezing cold takes right now on Twitter.
That's fine. You can hold. You know what? You can hold it against me. Where I say right now is I want to see more Anthony Richardson. I do. I want to see more Anthony Richardson. I obviously understand that the lows have been low and he misses too many passes. I just think the highs are high enough that I want to see more and see if he can develop. And so with that in mind, and I don't think there's anything more important than having a franchise quarterback. I think everybody would agree with that. It's not breaking any news. And that, I think the most important thing to a franchise quarterback to have is a good environment around him and a stable environment around him, which leads me to say that I would like Shane Steichen to return for a third year and to have Anthony Richardson playing that offense for one more year. And again, like not to have a new coach or coordinator to come in and try to teach him a new offense where he's trying to prove himself in a third season. That just feels like it's going to get too discombobulated and too tough. Like it's a lot to ask of him already being so young. He's already trying to get a handle on an offense, having not even played a full season in Shane Steichen's just yet. And I would like to see him stay just because I think that makes the most sense for Shane Steichen. And so that leads me to Chris Ballard. I don't necessarily. I'm one for continuity. I am one for keeping things aligned. I have grown up watching the Bears, where misalignment is their way of life, and it's not led to much of anything good.
You and me both.
So
brother.
I would say I'm willing to give Richardson one more shot, and I want to give Steichen one more shot. I'm not saying that Chris Ballard has earned one more shot. What I'm saying is that I'm not sure what firing the GM does other than discombobulates the organization and puts them in a different position going into next year where either that GM is going to inherit a coach and a quarterback he didn't draft and he didn't want, or a head coach, and that's going to create some misalignment and some oddness with the team. I guess I would say they're probably better positioned to give this whole thing one more run despite the frustration and the mediocrity. Again, I understand. Again, if they were to fire Chris Ballard, I would totally get it. And if you wanted to have a new GM come in and say, like, we are going to give Steichen and Richardson one more year, it's kind of like the Ballard thing. Ballard came in and got the last year of Pagano and got to evaluate the organization before making the changes. If that's the way you want to do it, I totally get it. I'm not even objecting to it. I'm just saying I think continuity in this situation for Anthony Richardson is the best way to go. Because I think if you're going to ditch the coach or ditch the GM, you probably end up ditching the quarterback anyway. So that's I'm not ready to do that yet. Like I'm looking at this game, man. They come out of the half. They're up 13-7. They get the interception of Bo Nix. First series, Jonathan Taylor drops the ball. They should be up 20-7. Okay, they get the ball back after forcing another Denver punt, which good on the defense for responding.
They balled out this past Sunday. Yes, they did.
Yeah, they forced the punt. The Colts get the ball back. Jonathan Taylor runs for 3 yards, and then what do we get? A Danny Pinter hold that makes it 2nd and 17. Those are the kinds of plays. We talked about this with Quentin Nelson before. Those drive-killing penalties. You wrote about it. That's brutal. Okay, so 2nd and 17, they don't recover from it. Next play, next complete pass to Michael Pittman in the flat there for 6 yards. He fumbles. Okay, that's 3 drives in a row. He's got no help from Taylor there on the fumble in the end zone. No help from his offensive line, who's under pressure and then puts him in 2nd and 17. No help from wide receiver Michael Pittman, who fumbles after he completes a pass. Next drive, Jonathan Taylor runs for 6 yards on first down. Holding on Danny Pinter. It's now 1st and 19. Like, come on. Like, the reason you put Anthony Richardson in this spot, everybody was excited about Jonathan Taylor and this team was because they had a run game and an offensive line you could rely on and take the pressure off Anthony Richardson. That is the opposite of what they did in this game. I am not trying to excuse Richardson for missing throws. He did miss throws. But good Lord, man, we want him to. Great quarterbacks do stop the bleeding. That is no doubt. And he struggles to do that. But goodness gracious, like, help him out a little. Those first 4 drives, you're putting him in impossible spots. And then obviously the trick play, that's not his fault. He didn't do that. Like that wasn't his. He ran the play that was executed. AD Mitchell was the one who was quote intercepted, and now he's down 24-13. Things are spiraling out of control, and then he throws the pick. Like I get it. I get it. I'm not trying to excuse Richardson for the bad throws. What I am trying to say is I don't. He needs more help from what the Colts have given him in certain situations. So,
And I do think that you make a good point because, and I wrote this way back when in the summer, the biggest offseason addition the Colts made was a healthy Anthony Richardson. They basically said, we have the team. If he can come in and build on that rookie season, we got enough to get in the playoffs. That was the general feeling. That's what I heard behind the scenes is, hey, if we get him back, we can go out there and win 10 games. We won 9 with Gardner Minshew. That was the narrative. And so while Anthony's had his struggles, whether it's, the focus stuff and then benching him, but also just the on-field stuff and playing wise, these guys are supposed to be better around him, and they haven't been. Even we talked about this, your star players, and to me, they only really have 3 star caliber players: DeForest Buckner, Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson.
Yep.
I wouldn't say that either of the 3 is playing their absolute best football right now. I know Buckner, I give him credit.
Buckner's probably the closest.
Yeah. He's been balling. I'm probably a little too hard on Buckner, but I would say Quentin Nelson and John Taylor, like for sure, those guys haven't been what they've been in years past. And so I tweeted this out before we did our pod, and I kind of pushed back on what Pittman said in the locker room. He's like, hey, we're young, we're learning. They're not really all that young, though. And the people were like, well, yeah, they are, because Pittman's only 26 and 20 or 27, and Quentin Nelson's in his 20s, and that's not the point I'm making. I meant young from like an experience standpoint, not from an age standpoint. If you think about it, I mean, most NFL players are young because you kind of have to be. So I don't know how many teams are playing, a bunch of Calais Campbells out there or LeBron Jameses, things like that. That's not happening. My point is, I should have been more specific. There's a lot of guys like on second and third contracts who haven't really lived up to what you said was part of that infrastructure to give Anthony a chance to be successful or to be great. And so when you compound that with some of the, issues we've seen with Anthony that haven't been corrected and some of the regression we've seen in him, especially early in the season, it's hard to say that this team is in a different place than it was. And the quote that I keep coming back to was the one that Ballard gave us right before the season, where I asked him, why should anybody believe in you?
Yeah.
In your plan, in your philosophy. And it's something that at the time it was like, man, that's a harsh question. And trust me, I thought about how to word it, and it still came out kind of harsh, but it's just a reality situation. When you haven't won anything, that's a fair question. Why should people trust you when you say these things year after year, nothing changes? And then Ballard's response was, either you believe in something or you believe nothing. It's easy to vacillate and go with and go with what the world wants you to do. You either believe in something or you don't. It's what we believe. If it gets me fired, so be it. If it gets me fired, so be it. That line right there is the one I think he'll have a hard time living down after this season. When you come into it saying, hey, AFC South is our goal. Playoffs is our goal. We're trying to win now. All these things. You bench Anthony for Joe Flacco. We're trying to win now. And then you get an opportunity to win now and you crumble. And I think that's the hard part about it. I mean, you had 5 turnovers. You had, 3 fumbles, 2 interceptions.
The penalties, man, they were killer.
And the penalties, I mean, even at the end of the game where Chris Lamont is lined up offsides, debatable call, but the fact that it was even made, they go back out there, instead of kicking a field goal, they get the ball back and kind of move the ball.
How about the punt return? Like that's even like the Mims punt return. Again, the game is still close.
It was like a 61-yard return.
Like they just failed in so many ways.
Yeah, it's like it's hard to justify.
You're right.
What Chris Ballard has done. It's hard to justify what any of these guys have done, honestly, this season. So it's rough. It's definitely rough. But
can I go back? Can I already take back my Can I take back my thing already? I've already decided
Nah,
that on
nah, nah.
December
It's set in stone.
17th. No, at 2:56 p.m. I've changed my mind. No, I mostly, like I said, I just want to get, like, here's what I want to say. I've been thinking about it
I
ever
see
since
what
you
you're
started
saying, though.
going.
I definitely see the continuity
It
matters a ton, especially with young
it
quarterbacks. The more you
yeah.
change, usually things don't go well.
I
Usually.
I guess I will say this. I don't want to be in the position of defending Chris Ballard. That is not what I'm trying to do. What I am saying is I would understand if this was one more season, let these three ride it out, the three of them, and see what happens. However, if they did replace him, I would 100% understand. It has not been good enough I want to make that clear. It has not been good enough for 8 years. And if they replaced him, I'd get it. I guess I'm more concerned with the quarterback's development than I am
Yeah.
with like the punitive part of like firing Ballard of like
Yeah.
this, you know what I mean? I guess that's where I'm at. I don't know. I'm wrestling with it still, to be honest with you. I would assume most Colts fans are.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think this is where we can kind of end it. I would like to hear from Jim Irsay.
Yeah,
Like that's the one guy we haven't heard from pretty much all year.
yeah,
And you know how much he cares about winning, this franchise being considered one of the upper echelon teams, upper quartile. You know, that probably rings a bell to some of our listeners out there. But I really want to pick his brain. Like, how do you feel about the situation? You care about this team more than any of us could possibly care. I mean, you own the team. And unlike some of these other owners who, I get it, they're all rich and making money off the team, all that stuff. Irsay really seems to care about the football part every time we talk to him.
for sure.
He has never seemed apathetic. So I want to just hear him explain his reasoning. Why or why not when it comes to Chris Ballard? Why or why not when it comes to Anthony Richardson? Those are the two main people because what he says when he decides ultimately is what's going to decide how this franchise goes moving forward. Do you stick with Anthony going into next season, which I think you probably should. Give him one more year. I mean, you don't pick number 4 overall pretty often, so you want to try to see that out and hope and pray that he can stay healthy and not get benched and all those things. But on top of that, man, it's just would he be someone willing to entertain bringing in somebody else? Like you never know, and it sounds crazy in some scenarios, but we've seen crazy with this franchise. We've seen them go and do crazy things. But my point is, I just want to hear what the owner has to say. What do you have to say for the coach you called a young Don Shula? You know, the quarterback that you said was Superman and that you believed in. And he also said he's not, you got to be more than an athlete. I will give Jim Irsay that. He said, we're not drafting Olympians here. We're drafting football players. So, but I want to hear his thoughts on that. You bet on him as well. They don't draft Anthony unless you sign off on it. And I also want to hear about the GM who you compared to Michael Jordan at one point. So, and you called a blue chip GM during the preseason. So all that to say, man, I would love to hear what Jim Irsay has to say because this isn't good enough. And that's the whole point. Like we can circle it all back and tie it and put a bow on it. They're not good enough. They're kind of good. They have moments of good, but they're never consistently good or good enough to do anything of remembrance. I mean, last thing I'll ask you. What will you remember about this Colts era? The Chris Ballard era? What's the defining moment? What's the defining win?
The defining moment. I was in the building for the defining moment.
Well, I know that.
When Andrew Luck retired. That was the defining moment.
Excluding that, but I mean,
yeah.
What? It's been how many years since then? 5, 6
The defining
years?
The defining moment, I think, for Chris Ballard's tenure. Oh man,
or
that's
theme,
a really
not even a moment, but just theme. Like, what do you remember about this?
The theme is well, mediocrity, right? That's what you
There
wrote.
You go.
It's what you wrote, and it is there are GMs in the NFL that I like watching who are gonna maybe Ryan Poles flames out in Chicago, but he's been very aggressive in making trades, trading for Montez Sweat, trading for Chase Claypool, didn't work out, trading for DJ Moore, like very aggressive going to get the guys that he wants. It might not work. I'm not even advocating for that. I am saying that approach is something that I personally enjoy. And I don't think Chris Ballard necessarily has that approach. I know he traded for DeForest Buckner. He brings that up all the time, is when he will take big swings, but that was a long time ago now. My thought is that he's been passive, a little more passive at the wheel for the Colts than I would have liked. So that's like mediocre and passive are the two words that I think I would use for Chris Ballard in certain ways that, like I said, he refused to take the swing at the quarterback in the draft until until very late in the, I mean, Luck, and then we did the Rivers thing, and then we did the Wentz thing, and then we did the Matt Ryan thing, and then maybe it's Sam Ellinger and Nick Foles, and like the quarterback churning is another, again, defining moment of the Chris Ballard era. It's just no. I mean, there's nothing good. Like I think the closest good thing, I guess, is the playoff win, the almost beating Buffalo in Buffalo in the wild card round with Phillip Rivers. Like that's it. Those are the highs for this franchise. Like those are the best moments this franchise has had. I don't. It's not good. It's not defensible. Like I said, if they fired him, it would be justified in what he has accomplished in 8 years. He's gotten, you wrote it in ahead of the season. He has gotten so much longer than so many other GMs with his track record, with his resume, would have gotten, because Jim Irsay really does like him, and thinks he is great at his job. So, but like I said, ultimately, it comes back to the quarterback for me and how the decisions around him affect him. I'm still in that position where I believe that Anthony Richardson can be a guy. I think, like I said, if you really want me to define this last couple of years, man, it's a shame that this is happening this year and this didn't happen last year. Like, if this was happening last year, we would all be like, okay, for year one struggles, rookie, totally understand. It makes sense. Let's see what happens in year two. But instead, we had to extend this whole thing out with Anthony Richardson an extra year. Then they kind of were also okay last year, so we thought, okay, add Richardson to the mix, they're going to be much better than they were. And it's been kind of okay again, but it's year two instead of year one. And it feels a little less excusable this time, even on Anthony Richardson's side of things, even though this is essentially his rookie season with the 14 games that he's played. So it's very confusing. It's very tough. I don't envy Colts fans. I don't envy Jim Irsay for having to make some tough decisions coming up here, but I understand some tough ones are going to have to be made.
Absolutely. So we'll wrap it up and end on that note. We'll have more for you coming soon after the Colts host the Titans in Week 16 at Lucas Oil Stadium.